That sounds fun. That sounds fun. Check 1, 2 on the microphone. Annie F. down in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right. Oh man, that sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to tell you about one of our incredible sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Valentine's Day is upon us, and maybe it's your favorite day. Maybe you love February 14th. Maybe it's your least favorite day or a day you feel neutral about. But I know it can bring up a lot of feelings for a lot of people. Relationships of any kind are complex and bring up all the things, and therapy can be a place to work through the challenges you face in all of your relationships or the relationships you still want to have. Therapy is and was a game changer for me. Y'all know this, and I truly think it could be an incredible gift to yourself and to the people you love. So if therapy is something you've been considering, give BetterHelp a try. They've made it incredibly simple to get started. Your session is done entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. It can also be done from home, which is great. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. Y'all know we love a quiz, and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Because finding the right match for you is really important too. So give your soul the gift of therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/thatsoundsfun today, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/thatsoundsfun. Today on the show, I get to talk with my friend, one of my favorite pastors, Nick Connolly. Nick is the founding and leading pastor of Bright City Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And you guys for sure recognize that last name. Yes, he is married to our dear, lovely, wonderful friend, Jess Connolly, who is a good friend of mine, a good friend of the podcast. Nick's brand new book, Don't Give Up Just Yet, came out on Tuesday. Nick is helping us learn how to choose persistence in the face of resistance and find the strength and faith to handle every tough situation that we face. He's teaching us really generously how to hold out and see what can happen if we just wait on the abundant gifts of God. This conversation, you guys, buckle up. We are going there. We learned some new things. We reinforced some old things. Nick is a quote factory. Just get ready. I think you're going to learn a lot from him. So here's my conversation with my friend, Pastor Nick Connolly.
That sounds fun.
Nick Connolly, welcome to That Sounds Fun.
It's so good to be here.
I can't believe you haven't been on. That's kind of been my theme this year. I keep sitting across from my friends and being like, I'm looking at my page of notes that Lillian does. It says new guest. I'm like, are you sure?
Yes. Well, when you're married to someone like I'm married to, Jess Connolly, I would have her 12 times out of 10.
I do too. I think I've had her about 12 times. So I'm very grateful. She sat in that same chair a few months ago when y'all were in town, and just so thankful. Okay, we're starting something different this year.
Okay.
Because it's the 10th year of the That Sounds Fun podcast. We are starting with our big question.
Okay.
Nick Connolly, because the show is called That Sounds Fun, tell me what y'all do for fun. What sounds fun to you?
Oh my gosh. All right. So I am learning fun. Like it does not come natural to me. And I'm learning this more about myself. But what has been sounding fun lately and what Jess and I do is we take salsa. We go to
dancing
salsa class.
You are lying to me.
I am
Y'all
not
are taking
lying.
salsa classes in
Charleston?
Charleston.
Yes.
Why do I keep on saying Charlotte?
That's okay.
I just am picturing like the trees with the moss and the cobblestones and y'all just salsaing down them.
I will receive that in Jesus' name.
Wow.
Things I have noticed is, number one, I love it. Like, I love it. It's so fun. We love it. It's incredible.
I'm shocked. Why do you love it?
Number one, it's fun.
Yeah.
Number two, I love all things Latin American culture.
Okay.
And so I feel like it's a connection with a family that I wasn't raised in that I probably am like,
in
this
your
was,
heart.
this is,
Yeah.
I'm Latino in my heart.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I love is it's just this thing that you're doing that it's so vulnerable. Like you're dancing in this room with all the people, and it's not what I'm good at, but it is a blast to do with Jess.
Wow.
And the one thing I do need, though, if there was a moment to ask for prayer, is I need deliverance over my hips. I have white boy hips. Like
They just won't do what needs to be done.
I need deliverance. Like I need to be set free. But right now, salsa lessons with Jess Connolly sounds fun.
I cannot believe y'all started salsa lessons.
We went
Brilliant.
to a Noche Buena. I think that's it. Party, Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And they did salsa. And I'm telling you, we were at the party and I signed us up. And
No.
I didn't even ask Jess. I was like,
my gosh,
sign
we're
up.
doing this.
And then I said, hey, we're taking salsa lessons. And she was like, what? It's like, we're doing it. So salsa with Mrs. Jess Connolly sounds incredible.
I mean, y'all's family has had a year of releasing books, by the way. Like your sister-in-law and her husband, their mother-in-law is releasing a book too. You releasing your first book. Jess is forever releasing stuff. Tell me what that feels like in a family that is all releasing books this year.
It has been I feel like we're batching it.
Yeah.
So we did this with our kids. Like they all were in potty training at the same
Yeah,
time,
that's right.
like not
That's
sleeping at the same time. We got Irish triplets and then a bookend canon.
Yeah.
And so it's been good because we're batching it all together.
Yeah.
And it's been so great. So I got a text this morning and my brother and sister-in-law, they're in Colorado with Focus on the Family. And I'm here. And so it's just been incredible to cheer each other on and they're incredible books. They're incredible works. And Jess's is incredible and it's going to be amazing. And so it's just been a fun season.
I mean, it's been a fun season, and you
also
sat down. Everyone should know in real life, we're good friends. We talk a lot. I talk to Jess all the time. You sat down and said, I went to on-site 55 days ago.
55.
Yeah.
Literally December 7th.
Yeah.
Flew in, didn't know if I could get on a plane.
Yeah.
And went to on-site. And
Okay,
so now I'm here in Nashville again.
What do you want to say about that? That you are a well-known, prominent pastor of a growing, healthy church, a family that the internet sees and loves, and yet it was time to do a tune-up, or it was time for... was it like, this is a good time for me to take a break, or was it like, I am breaking?
It was a full engine swap. I broke.
Wow.
I broke.
After writing a book, after it's about to come out.
So what happened is I think it was November 17th. I literally just had what I thought was a cardiac event. We had just got back from a date night, and I was rushed to the hospital, back of an ambulance. Cool ER hack is if you go in an ambulance, they'll get you back. Like there's no wait.
That's what I've heard. I've never ridden in one, thank God.
Praise God.
Yeah.
They get you right back. And it was 7 hours of testing. And we get to the end of it and they're like, Mr. Connolly, your heart's fine. Everything's fine. We don't know what's going on. We just tell you that you're not, that your heart's not broken or that things are okay but not okay. So I make a follow-up with a cardiologist and do the things, and then the
whole time in your mind, are you thinking something's wrong with my heart, or do you know something else is going on?
I did not know what was going on.
Okay.
I was like, man, that was a really freak accident.
Wow.
So what happened? This was crazy.
Scary.
And then literally my heart rate went from 60 to 160. Like I can barely do that running.
Yeah.
Like it just went out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then we had Thanksgiving, and I felt like a little bit on edge. And even backing up, Jess and I have been talking, and I was like, hey, I am doing the right rituals, but I do not feel like I'm being replenished.
Wow.
Like, so I'm taking a Sabbath. I'm taking my days off. I'm waking up and spending time with God. Like I'm trying to give everything to Him. And in my heart, I was doing those things, but my body was not responding. And so I'd get to the end of the Sabbath, and I was like, I don't feel replenished. Like I would do all the things, like eat well. Like the night I went to the hospital, like I had a beautiful plate of salmon from our favorite Greek restaurant. And so like
right.
I'm doing.
Like I didn't eat pizza.
I know,
God
which is
bless
what
pizza.
I wanted.
We love, right.
Had pizza last night. It was
Right.
incredible. And so I was doing all the right things, and I was going through the motions, and I was practicing the right rituals that, all the wonderful people on your podcast say to do, like your Sabbath, all the things.
For you to say, though, that it wasn't working.
And it was not working.
Yeah.
And I felt a stress in my body. And so day after Thanksgiving, it happened again. This time it happened for 5 hours. And so I'm rushed to the hospital.
Okay, tell me about hour 2. Are you saying they're like, this isn't going away?
Well, I asked my cardiologist, I was like, hey, if this happens again, when do we need to worry? And she said, if it happens longer than an hour, and you're experiencing, you're like, hey, I think 5 minutes is enough. Like,
Yeah.
We're good. But she's like, wait an hour. So I waited an hour. It didn't stop. go to the hospital, and I'm hooked up to everything. Like they're checking everything. I can see my heart rate going up. I can see my breathing rate change. I can see my blood pressure change. Like all these things was just going up and down, up and down. And that lasted for 5 hours. And, I'm in the hospital room. Jess is with me. We're praying. My brother-in-law ended up coming down. He's praying with me. We're like trying to
and
let
the kids are just home, probably
they're
scared.
home kicking it. And I that was the other part is like when you're a parent, you want to minimize the trauma for your children, especially if you've had trauma.
Yes.
And so I'm like, that was making me more anxious. And so anyway, we get home from the hospital on that day after Thanksgiving, and I remember getting home, and I felt like I had been through a heavyweight fight. My nervous system was shot. I felt super nauseous, and I'm just sitting at the table, like force feeding myself oatmeal. And I love oatmeal. Like it is one of my favorite meals.
Okay.
Some people hate it. They hate on it.
I love it.
But I love it. And I couldn't even eat it. And I was like, man, what is going on with me? And then all of a sudden it started up again. And I'm pacing around the house. I have like worship music going on in the background. I'm praying nonstop.
Did your brain switch to this is something spiritual or this is something emotional? Or are you still like, something is in my body and they don't know what it is?
Something is in my body. Something is happening and I am not well. And in that moment, I realized, I don't know if it was God or what, I was like, I'm having panic attacks. And so
the Lord just told you.
For 10 days after that, I didn't sleep.
What?
I had constant panic attacks. I would stay up all night. I would journal. I was praying scripture. I was reading the last paragraph of chapter 8, Awakened by Attack.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to, this thing that I read in your book that I want you to, if you're headed in the right direction, you are going to experience resistance.
Yes.
I mean, okay, so keep going.
And
Sorry.
then, it was happening. And I remember reading that last paragraph over and over and over again, because when you're in the midst of it, like you don't feel victorious. Like you feel like you are being tossed to and fro by the wind.
Yes.
And I just remember like, God, what is this? What's happening? So I would journal through the night, 6 hours of journaling. I'm reciting scripture. Like I'm like, these are the promises that I'm claiming and proclaiming over the panic. And then
Is Jess up with you?
Sometimes she knew I wasn't sleeping, but randomly she had a bout of panic attacks about a year or two ago, and hers were at night, and it was the dark night of the soul, and you're trying to do everything you can. So I remember if I could, this is literally what would happen is I knew that I had friends who were a little more seasoned in life, and I knew that they would get up. Some would get up at 4, some would get up at 5.
That's right.
And so when I knew that my 4 o'clock friend would be getting up at 4 o'clock, I would text him at 4, and I just said, hey, can you just pray for me? And then my 5 o'clock person would wake. I knew they were up, and I was like, hey, can you just pray for me?
Pastor Jimmy in Scotland for me, because they're 6 hours ahead.
Oh, see, I need some time. I need some time change pastors.
Yeah,
yes.
you need some European pastoring, because I can text him anytime in the middle of the night and he's up because it's their morning.
See, this is the life hack that I needed. And so I'm up all night. And then I remember the other panic that I had was I didn't want my kids to leave school seeing me like this, because then they would be panicked all day. They would be stressed about me all day. They'd be worried about me all day. So I'd feel even more worried about that. And so I'm literally wrapped up in this blanket, because for me, I would go through these like hot, cold waves. Like my body was just fighting back.
No kidding.
And I would wait for them to leave, and then I would be like, all right, Lord, like I just need an hour or two of sleep.
Yeah.
Just give me any type of sleep. And I'd sleep for an hour or two, wake up, do it again.
Gosh.
And that was like 10 to 12 days of that.
Nick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's also Christmas Eve coming. Or Christmas is coming.
Holidays have passed. Like, and even for me, like my preaching and responsibilities around the church around then were decreased drastically. And so usually I'm winding down around then.
Yeah.
But the church like rallied around me. They took care of me. And so on December 7th, I flew to On-Site.
Well, I was going to, so for our friends who don't know, On-Site Workshops is a extended counseling experience. One of it, I mean, they have a couple of different offerings, but I assume you did Living Center program?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, so the Living Center program is 4 days, 5 days of pretty intense.
6 days.
6
nights
days.
without checking in on the like Jess and I have been together for 20 plus years, and it was the first time we hadn't talked.
Wow.
Every day.
Wow. So why was that the right yes?
I was so desperate And Jess and I talked about it for years. Like, it's not making jokes about the trauma in your life. It's you probably should spend some time at on-site. It's like, okay, all right. We have great friends who have gone and love the place. And we have dear friends who work there, and it's just an amazing place. And so it was always in the background. And then when all this happened, I was like, I'm attacking this at all angles. I'm going spiritual. I'm going physical. I want to go through the soul. I want to go through every part of this because I think, number one, I was in such a place of desperation that I was like, I will do anything and everything you want me to do, God. Yeah. And for me, with the panic, there was just a level of fear that came into my life that I had never experienced before. Wow. So for a guy who would go to the ends of the earth tomorrow, if you asked me, I wouldn't go to the end of the driveway. Wow. I could not go outside of my house. I could not be alone. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. So getting on the plane to go to on-site, I didn't know if it was going to happen. I'm at the airport trying to catch my Southwest flight. And I'm like, am I getting on this plane? Yeah. Am I going to make it? Because that's the other part with panic attacks is it's not that you've had one, it's that am I going to have one? Am I going to have one? And so I'm like, am I going to melt down on the plane? Am I going to melt down at on-site? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? I couldn't even sit still. And so I was like, am I going to be able 6 hours of counseling sessions every day? I'm like, am I going to be able to sit in a room with people and talk? And so I had my brother-in-law, he's a pastor in Charleston as well. Yeah. And he had this sermon he preached, and it was one of the Sundays I didn't go to church. I couldn't go to church and felt like God was asking me to take some time off. And I was like, well, I'm going to church somehow, some way. Yeah. And so I tuned into his church, and he was preaching, and he preached on the 10 lepers being healed, and one came back. Yeah. I've always focused on the one who came back, but he made this statement, and he said, one of the things that's beautiful about this passage is that healing happened as they went. Yeah, wow. And I felt like God was saying to me that the healing is going to happen as you go. Yeah. And so every step, every little thing, even driving myself to my doctor's appointments or doing my normal routine, I kept saying to God, all right, you've told me that healing is going to happen as I go. And so I knew that healing was on the other side of that flight, that healing was on the other side of on-site, that healing was on the other side of whatever he was calling me to do. And so that's what happened.
It's so good to hear because so many of our friends listening are built like you and I and kind of achievery people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what you are proving is true is we think if I keep going, I can survive this. And that is a little bit true. That is not true, but what is actually true is there is something to put the next foot in front of the next foot. But you are pursuing healing at the same time. You're not just going through the motions or just doing your life. You are going, I am going to get on a plane, not because I'm running or not because I'm achieving, but I'm getting on a plane because it's going towards healing.
Amen.
That is really something. That is good for us, my personality to hear.
And with the idea of resistance and persistence, it's not that I'm white knuckling through this thing at the detriment of my health. Yeah. Is that part of persistence is finding the health and the abundance in the midst of the battle. Yeah. And so I was like, this is the battle. This is what I wrote about. I knew that what I wrote about was in the past, but I knew that, and in the book I say that this is still the message of my future.
Yes, that's right.
And so I knew that part of persistence meant facing this resistance and saying, hey, this is not final. This is not fatal. I'm going to get on the other side of this. I'm going to press on. I'm going to press through. God's going to be with me in the midst. He's going to be with me in the hard times, and he's going to be with me on the other side. And that there's a harvest on the other side of this. There is something that God wants to do on the other side of this. But right now, I'm in an airport lobby, and I just need to get on that plane. Yeah, that's it. I just need to get on the plane.
I mean, so often I think the sentence I need to hear in my own head is, this doesn't last forever. This won't last forever. Yeah. And so you had to tell yourself, this is not final or fatal, not final or fatal, not final or fatal. Did on-site fix you? Is that how that's not how it worked for me. On-site did not fix me.
No. But what it did was make me aware of, it's almost like I feel like everything in life is a roadmap or a turn that you're making. And you're like, oh, okay, I see that I think God is calling me to take a left here or calling me to take a right here. And so when you're at on-site and you're processing, it was, oh, okay. And so for me, the big aha moment was and again, I think you would probably resonate with this, is that you have all these things in your life that God is asking you to steward. He's asking you to hold. He's asking you to lead. He's asking you to launch.
Yeah.
And you're doing it out of obedience. And then sometimes you look back and you're like, man, I'm holding a lot. But this is just all you know. Like, this is just life. Like, this is another day at AFD Inc. Like,
when people are like, your life looks so busy, I'm like, compared to what?
I don't know.
I don't know. This is just my life. It isn't busy. It's just full. Yeah. So
this
you're
is what
the
he's
same.
asked me to do.
This is what he's asked me to hold. I hold this
Yeah.
church and this book and my family and our friends and the city. And
We have the plate. And
Yeah.
what I realized is
It's
that
really
I've
interesting.
been holding a responsibility plate since I was like 5 or 6. And growing up with a single mom, I just always
you
felt
write beautifully about that in the book, by the way.
thank you.
Very honoring.
Thank
but
you.
Very truthful about what the kids experience in that, but honoring.
And before this moment, I just turned 40 last year, so I'm 41 this year, and I'm asking God for that like next 40 word, and I felt like He said, "Hey, you spent the first 40 having to be an adult. Like you had to grow up real quick, and so I want you to spend the next 20 or next 40 learn how to be a child."
Oh, wow. No.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm thinking that sounds incredible. Like, what does that mean? Do I get to play all the time? Do I get it? And what I felt like I was
You're like,
doing.
"Are we going on vacation?"
Yes. What I felt like I was doing is He was pruning everything away to uncover the inner child.
Wow.
And I don't mean that in like a crazy, like psychological way. I mean that more in like a faith like a child kind of way.
Yes.
And so what Onsite did was tear down so I could rebuild on a solid foundation. And what I realized is that I grew up quick. I have this high sense of responsibility for everyone and everything in my life, and I'm not made to carry everything.
Yeah.
Some people, if you're listening, you're like, "Oh, duh, Nick, like I've been living out this for the last 40 years." I'm like, "Well, congratulations, that's incredible."
Yeah.
For me, I didn't realize how much I had been carrying, and I think I'm sure there's a book on this, but like there's a difference between carrying and caring. And I was carrying everything and caring. And so even personally in my own life around this time, like we just had a bunch of deaths like in my family and around me happen all at once.
Right.
And so did Onsite fix me? No, but it started the journey.
That's right.
And you know, the only thing that can fix me is the healing power of God.
Yeah.
And it just got me going in the right direction.
Yeah. I'm sure they said this to you while you're there, but their 2-degree thing of like
yes,
your
exactly.
life, your life isn't changing 180 degrees while you're here. It's changing 2 degrees. But I will tell you, I went January of 2018.
Okay.
And the difference in my life in January of 2024 because of that 2 degrees is significant.
It's beautiful.
So you're going to, I think it's something like if you start in Antarctica and you put 2 ships 2 degrees apart and let them stay on that path, one ends up in the U.S. and one ends up in Europe.
It's
it's
true.
So different. My life is so different because of the 2-degree work I did at Onsite 6 years ago. Is that the math? So I think you will, 55 days out is still for me, I can't speak for you. 55 days out, I was still very raw and I still was very, how do I live like this?
Yeah, exactly.
So you can.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm proud of you for going. It is a lot of work and it takes a lot of humility for a family leader, a church leader, a community leader to say they need help.
I need all the help all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like and I think part of it too is you live a life wanting to help so many people, that it was just beautiful that it was my turn. And not that it wasn't my turn before that.
Yeah.
One of the first messages I preached for our faith community, Bright City, was on Mark 2. And it's the 4 guys taking the guy to Jesus. And I said, hey, this isn't about getting people to church. This is about getting people to Jesus. And so if you're on the mat, this is the place for you.
Yeah.
And I've just spent the last 75 days being on the mat, and it's been beautiful. And
it's just my turn.
Yeah, it's my turn for the mat, and people are tearing off the roof for my healing, and they're in my corner. And you know, I think one of the lies that we believe as faith community leaders, church leadership, is that this community is for them, and the community is for us. Like it's for us, and the healing is for us.
That's so hard, though.
Yeah,
it's so hard.
And God's done it at Bright City, and He's built that, and so I receive it. Like the healing is here, and it's not just for them; it's for me too.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Hey, friends, just interrupting this conversation to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Ritual. Okay, if you spot a too good to be true health hack from a mile away, so you read all labels like it's your job, don't worry. We've got a legit option for you and one of my favorite multivitamins. Ritual knows that every good skeptic deserves a multivitamin that exceeds your standards. So that's why their clinically backed Essential for Women 18 Plus multivitamin has high quality, traceable key ingredients in clean, bioavailable forms. I really love their multivitamin because I know I can trust it. And here's why. Ritual's Essential for Women is USP verified, which basically means you know you can trust what you're putting in your body. Only about 1%, you guys, of supplement brands on the market have the USP verified mark, which that's crazy. But it shows that the product contains the ingredients actually listed on the label. So yes, and thank you, Ritual. You take 2 capsules a day. I prefer to take them in the morning, and their capsule has this minty essence in every bottle that helps keep things fresh. It also makes taking multivitamins every day very actually enjoyable. It also has a delayed release design to help make it gentle on an empty stomach. Plus, Ritual multivitamins are vegan, non-GMO, gluten and major allergen-free, and certified B Corp. They have industry-leading sustainability standards too, which I think is really cool. Ritual uses scientific tools to select lower carbon packaging, prioritize sustainable sourced ingredients, and set ambitious climate goals. They're a female-founded B Corp, meaning they are holding themselves accountable to not just their company's financial health, but also the health of people and our planet. No more shady business. Ritual's Essential for 18 Plus is a multivitamin you can actually trust. Get 20% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/thatsoundsfun. Start Ritual or add Essential for Women 18 Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/thatsoundsfun for 20% off. That link and pretty much every other link you could ever hope for are in the show notes or in Friday's AFD Week in Review that we will send you. You can sign up for that in the show notes as well. We have one more amazing partner to tell you about, Beam. Okay, y'all know I was having trouble sleeping recently, especially right when I got back from Rwanda, dealing with a lot of jet lag. And listen, let me tell you about the Beam Dream Powder. It works some serious magic. Y'all, I cannot emphasize enough. This stuff makes you sleep. I sleep so hard when I drink this before bed. It really works. And today, my friends get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. It's now available in delicious flavors like chocolate peanut butter, which I would love to try, and cinnamon cocoa. So far, I'm sticking with the healthy hot chocolate version. Oh, it is so good. It's only 15 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Other sleep aids can cause next day grogginess, which I've been experiencing. But Dream contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. It has helped me so much, and I am not groggy the next day. Find out why Forbes and New York Times and AFD are all talking about Beam, and that's why it's trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time, you just go to shopbeam.com/TSF, like that sounds fun, and use the code TSF at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/TSF and use the code TSF for up to 40% off. Okay, now back to our conversation with Nick.
That sounds fun.
Talk to our friends who feel like they're holding a lot. Is there a way you could have identified, I'm not shooting you like you did something wrong, but is there a some other dial on their dashboard they should be looking at right now before the panic attack sends that one on the left into the red? You know, that one that always says, whenever I push my gas, that
RPMs.
one, it feels like that. Yeah, the RPMs. It feels like your RPMs went to 6.
Yeah.
And then you noticed. Was there another light on the dash we should be looking for or questions we should be asking if we're holding too much?
That's a great question. I definitely had signs. And I think I saw them more as like spiritual questions versus like warning lights.
Oh, interesting.
And honestly, again, you're not saying like shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I think I do need to pay attention more to the lights in my life.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing that as someone who has pioneered and planted a church
Right.
and have entrepreneurial endeavors, like they just tell you like pioneering is hard. And so 99% of the day is just getting through.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're meant to pioneer everything all the time at every place.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to settle. And so I think looking past that pioneering spirit of like, hey, not everything needs the land cleared and the trees knocked down. So like take a breath. And so I do think the warning signs, like I had them in my body, like there's stress in your body. And sometimes your like neck's locked up and you're like, oh, well, this is going to be interesting to do the 43 things that I have to do with a locked up neck.
Yeah.
Or, hey, maybe I should take it easy. Or like if your neck's locked up, it's like, oh, well, the workout's going to be interesting. Well, okay, maybe you shouldn't work out. And I think we have a crush it culture that's like you've got to punch everything in the face and crush it at all times. And so if you do feel like there's some warning lights on, one of the things that I've learned is that my persistence is actually dependent upon the pause. And so me actually keeping going and persevering in life is based sometimes on a pause. Like it's based sometimes on a pivot. It's based sometimes on a like, I just need to slow down.
Yeah.
I just need to stop. I just need to pause. I just need to make sure that I am okay. And the other thing I'm learning too is Sabbath is incredible, but I you are the president of the fun club, but I'm part of that uncovering the inner child is like, I've got to figure out how to have fun. Yeah. Like I've got to figure out how to find the abundance that God has for me in this life. Because I think, Jess Connolly and I, we're like some serious peoples for Jesus and the kingdom. And, And I think
Joan of Arc, she's like a Joan of Arc of our age. Yeah.
Exactly. And I just think, Joan was great, but Joan and Nick don't have to be that all the time. So we've got to find those pockets. And so warning lights, if your Sabbath isn't replenishing you, if it's not if it's not working, it's not about the ritual. It's about the relationship and the replenishment. And so you've got to figure out how that works, because I know like Sabbath is a big practice right now, but like practice should work. Yeah. Like practice should make you better.
It should be, you should be different on the other side of it.
Exactly. Yes. And I wasn't. And I was craving more. And what would have happened if I just said, hey, Sabbath was just the drop. Maybe I need a little bit more. And I just didn't give myself permission for that. And I think so that was good. And then I think I just was carrying so much stress in my body. Yeah. And I'm not – so I tried to work out. I love working out. It's an incredible avenue for me. And I thought they were like workout twitches or workout things. Yeah. And I just wish I would have paid attention. Yeah. And so I think God has wired so many things in our life to be the warning lights. Yes. And I don't think that we should ignore them. Yeah. As I'm looking back.
I'm the same way. I also, we've been friends long enough. I don't think this will make you feel weird, but for women, we need to, when we see the lights, we also need to look at where we are in the month and go like, okay, so this is true. Every warning light is true. And also because of the week I am in this month, let me give it a week. Yeah. And at the end of next week, if my neck is still tied up, if I'm still unable to control what I eat, if I still can't get enough sleep, then we go to the next level, because that's where because yesterday I found myself very irritable and I was like, let's ask some questions. What is actually going on? Then I was like, oh, okay. So this can all, it does not make any of it less true. It doesn't make your stress less true. But I went like, oh, okay. What if you slowed down this week because all your dashboard says slow down?
You were carrying a big load yesterday.
Right. When we released the single-purpose league. Yeah.
You released it. And I didn't realize that maybe I needed a minute after I do hard things. Mm-hmm. And so I think what you're saying is so true. Yeah. We're in this culture, we're like, all right, I'm going to do the hard thing. Where's the next hard thing? It's
I like that too, though, Nick. That's the problem. I think so many of our friends listen the same way. I'm like, go harder, go home. What are we doing? Don't wait. I mean, earlier, right before you got here, Lily was like, should we brainstorm this? And I was like, we're not going to use our brain like that yet because we need these 3 other things. So we're not using our brain on that until we get these other things that we're going to use our brain right, because I'm unwilling to waste her brain time or my brain time. Yeah. But that's because I want to go. Yeah. And so how do we balance that? I mean, your book, Don't Give Up Just Yet. I love persistence. Why'd you pick persistence over perseverance?
Because the persistent widow. I think.
Oh, I love her so much.
Yes, and I think perseverance is the characteristic. I think resiliency is the other end. I think persistence is the action.
That's so good.
I think
I
think persistence is what we can control.
Yes.
Perseverance is who I become, or I become one who is persevering.
Yes.
Resiliency is what I show. Persistence is what I control.
When I tell you everyone's going to ask for that quote on a graphic, so I'm just going to go ahead and say out loud, we will make it. We will make that quote on a graphic. That is so helpful.
Yeah.
That is so helpful. So in a culture that does tell us, do the hard thing so you can get to the next hard thing.
Yeah.
Persistence also tells us that. And yet then our bodies don't always hold it. How do we know when to say no? You do a beautiful job teaching this in the book. How do we know when God is closing a door, when God's saying no?
Yeah. Some of the things I've learned in this life is sometimes the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. And so
dating truth. The right guy at the wrong time is the wrong guy. So
let's just put it on everything.
Yes,
let's make that a bumper sticker. And so I have a little bit of a track record, and you would probably say the same thing as you have. Just have track record of when you have God's momentum, there's nothing like it.
That's right. You're
God
right.
does in 1 second what takes us 10 years.
Yes.
And I want that kind of momentum in my life.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I really...
His breath behind it is a Christian-y thing people say a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I have learned is that God is still at work when I'm not working. God is still moving when I am sitting still. God is multiplying when I'm taking a breath.
Yeah.
Like heaven is still proclaiming when I feel like it's silent. Like
Yeah.
there is a lot of God activity that's happening that is not dependent around my activity.
Yeah.
And so it is a hard lesson to learn, because I think sometimes the converse of that is you think you're being lazy or passive when you're not doing. And I don't think that's true all the time. I know. Like,
but it's true some of the time with me.
some of the time. But
No, that's what's hard for me, Nick. It's hard to distinguish lazy.
We've known each other for a long time. You have a lot of incredible people in your life. I don't think anyone would say Annie F. Downs is lazy. I don't think like if Annie would just work harder, like I think we would all be better if
fair, but I still feel. I mean, I don't want to be wasteful.
Yeah, in stewardship, but the beautiful thing about stewardship, the biblical concept of stewardship is worshipful and active. Like it is. You're sitting still
You
in
are
your
a quote factory. Stewardship.
I don't know about that.
That is so good.
But steward, like you can wait and still be a great steward.
Yeah,
like you
that's
can
good.
trust God with all the things and still be walking in the obedience and the abundance that he has for you.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I am trying to learn is that there is a beautiful process even in that. And so the persistence one day might look like I've got to show up tomorrow at work and I don't want to.
Yeah.
Or like another one I felt early on as a dad is like, can I get a job? Like would that, like the employees that I have right now, which are my kids, like this is hard. Can I get new coworkers, new employers? And in those days, like sometimes
my bosses are demanding.
My bosses are demanding, the tiny tyrants. And I think that there is sometimes a beauty of like, I'm going to persevere through this moment because there is a produce of a harvest on the other side.
Yeah.
And I just have to get through this time, this day, this season, and I'm going to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. And then I think there is the greater picture of God is doing an incredible work with my whole life.
Wow.
And part of that pausing and taking a breath is actually going to only aid my persistence.
Pausing actually aids your persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is really important. How do you, when you have little kids, get to do that?
Yes. Yeah. I think it happens not rhythmically, and I think it happens in the moment. And I think one of the things that I felt like God taught me in those seasons, and honestly, it's happening as teenagers because now I'm back and I'm responsive to their schedule.
Yeah, what grade are your three big ones in?
Okay, so we're about to hit the birthday gauntlet. So my son turns 17 tomorrow.
Oh, so the one that's with us,
yes,
Elias?
Yeah. He's
17
here
tomorrow? Happy birthday.
in the studios.
Wow.
So he's 17. Then we do the 16 with Glory, my daughter. Then the 15 with my other son, Benjamin.
Yep.
And then my 11-year-old just turned 11 2 days ago.
Wow.
And so they're in 10th. No, it's 11th, 10th, 9th, 5th.
Wow.
And so what I'm learning in this season is the same when they were younger, is that you are at the mercy of their schedules.
Yeah.
And there
It's
was
not feeding them. It's getting them to basketball and getting them to soccer and the plays. And
I was considering an Uber job at one point. I was like, if I'm going to be driving them, let me drive somebody else and
might
make
as
the
well
money.
get paid for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to learn that in a culture that preaches a gospel of, if you don't have regular routine, you're in heresy. Like this is the day in the life of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so now I've got to have that day in the life where I get up and I make my smoothie and I deep clean my house and I spray spritzer on my bed.
But first you have to set up your phone.
Exactly.
To get yourself waking up.
And like, so sometimes we're on these places that, and it's the same word that God gave Joshua. Do not look to the left and the right.
Wow.
And the problem with that is now it's called a scroll. It's not called the left and the right.
That's right.
And so I think we buy the lie that this is how it should look. And one of the things that I learned then and I'm relearning now is that there is a beauty into the responsiveness of the day. Wow. And there are pockets that you will be able to seize and that you will be able to say, hey, at this, God has moved. They are napping at the same time.
Yeah.
This is revival.
Yeah.
And so instead of, unless you want to get things done,
right.
Instead of getting things done, what would it look like to get something done for your soul? Or like, what would it look like to take a pause? Because the stuff is always there.
Right.
Like your to-do list is always there.
Yeah.
The rest and the pausing that is going to give us the energy and the spiritual fervor that we need for the rest of our lives. I mean, we've got to take those moments.
Yeah.
We've got to.
As I've been reading your book this week, this morning I woke up late and I was deciding breakfast or workout. And what I had to do in I wanted to work out.
Yes.
What I had to do in the moment was say, what can you do another time today? Work out. What can you not do another time today? Eat your first meal.
That is so good.
And so, I mean, it is what you taught me, and don't give up just yet. I mean, I was like, I am living off of what I am reading, because what you say in the book is like, do what you have to do right now. Mm-hmm. And you have to let go of it. Like, persistence is doing the thing that's right in front of you.
Yes.
And that's what, and so I sat with the Lord. I mean, it was a far more, the Lord was probably like, I will talk to you about this, Annie, because I love you, but there are more important things. But I was like, I'm understanding the importance of me choosing to have good nutrition in my day and put aside the thing that that brings up all these other things, right?
Yes.
And so when we are in that moment of deciding, I mean, this is what you write about, but like, what's the right thing to do in the moment? What is the persistence?
Yeah.
And what is the ego?
Yes.
And what is the open door? And what is the just go anyway? Like, how do we know? What's it look like to listen to God for this? Or do we just go and hope for the best, which I do think that is sometimes what God wants us to do, is just go live.
That's good. Well, here's what I love about what you did is I love that you talked to God about it.
I did.
And I think God's more about the process, and I think we're more about what the process produces.
Certainly I am, yeah.
And so God's like, hey, workout, breakfast. I'm so glad that we're here together in this moment.
Yeah.
But I think what he loves about that is that you talk to him.
Yeah.
And so I think when I think about that in light of what you were just saying is I think God loves that we come to him.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I talk about in the book is I talk about this idea is that, like, I think sometimes we think that we have to have this like holier than thou language and like button up for God and like, I can't talk to God about my breakfast, or I can't do this, I can't do that.
Right.
And like, God is the only person that we can be real with.
Yeah.
God is the only
That's
person
right.
who can take all of our emotions, all of our anger, all of our sadness.
Yeah.
And so one of the first steps to persistence is just being real and being in conversation with God. And so left or right,
wow.
I don't know.
Right.
Up or down, going to God,
Yeah.
amen.
Yeah.
And so I think in those moments he guides. And the beautiful thing about that is that you could have had breakfast or worked out. You could have worked out and not had breakfast. You could have had breakfast while you worked out.
Right.
You could have grabbed a cast iron pan in the kitchen and curled it while you fried some eggs on the nonstick. Like you could have done all of those things.
Yeah.
And God is so pleased with Annie F. Downs in every decision.
Yeah.
And so I think it's less about the right and the wrong and more about the relationship.
Yes.
And you practice the relationship.
That's it. Practice the relationship.
Yeah.
That's the trick to persistence
Yeah.
is to practice the relationship.
Amen.
Dude, that is very good.
That sounds fun.
Hey, friends, just interrupting this conversation one more time to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Hiya Health. Okay, we've already talked about vitamins for us as grown-ups, but let's talk about vitamins for my mini BFFs. I know it's a struggle to get kids to take a vitamin, and just when you think you found a good option, you realize it's actually candy in disguise because it's packed with sugar and other unhealthy chemicals. But this is where Hiya Health comes in. It's the children's vitamin that both tastes good and doesn't have a bunch of junk in it. Hiya was created so you can feel great about what you're giving my mini BFFs, and they'll actually like it too. Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then filled with 15 essential vitamins and minerals. And your first shipment comes with these fun little stickers for your kids to stick on their bottles. Hiya is also sent straight to your door, which means you don't need to run one more errand. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. You get 50, you guys, 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/thatsoundsfun. Go to hiyahealth.com/thatsoundsfun and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. And now back to finish our conversation with Nick.
That sounds fun.
One of the things you talk a lot about, we have a good chunk of friends listening who are in ministry, full-time, part-time, volunteer. And y'all have walked with me through this, but we've had painful stuff happen at our church. Y'all have had painful stuff happen at your church. And right now, I think the last I heard Carrie Newhoff say is that Barna said that like 40% of pastors are considering whether to stick this out or whether they want to keep pastoring or whether they want a different gig.
Wow.
And you write in the book about the rejection of people leaving your church. And what it felt like when that guy sat you down for coffee and he said,
Yeah.
thanks for coming. And you're like, I thought I invited you. What's
Yes.
happening?
What's happening here? Am I in the Twilight Zone?
Yeah. Will you talk to pastors for just a minute and staff people at churches? Like, why persist at that job right now?
Yeah. I wonder, and I'm not in everyone's life that is hearing this, but I wonder how many things we've missed out on because we've allowed rejection to be our God in our life.
Wow.
And so rather than God leading us, we've allowed the hurts and the pains from rejection to lead us.
Yeah.
And so I was and am, like, that is my default, is like, oh, you reject me? Like, fine. You're on the blacklist too.
Right. Yeah.
And
I won't miss you. See ya.
yeah, exactly.
But it's not true.
And you know, God's timing is so incredible. So as I'm saying this, it's not like I'm a Joseph scholar. Like I was reading about Joseph this morning, and I was just in awe of how beautiful God had brought the beauty out of the ashes.
Yeah.
And how when his family came calling, he didn't curse them, he didn't reject them, he like blessed them.
Yeah.
He put the money back in the bag when they
Yeah.
tried to pay him.
Yeah.
And I was like, literally this morning, I was like, Lord, like when the dream comes true in my life, I want to love those who have rejected me.
Wow.
Like if the dream comes true in my life, if things happen in my life that are beautiful and wonderful, how am I going to respond in that moment?
Wow.
And so I think what happens within the ministry space is that like people get on a list, like if you're not for my thing, I don't want to be about your thing. And I wonder if there's a different way. I wonder if there's a way where even like one of the things that Jess and I talk about a lot is we want to give people what we didn't have.
Yeah.
And so as entrepreneurs starting a business, like one of the most beautiful things that they do at Go It Tell Gals is they have maternity leave.
Yeah.
Did Jess Connolly get maternity leave? Absolutely not. She's like laptop with the pregnant belly, like building the thing. And so we want to give people what we didn't have.
Yeah.
And also we want to give people what they might not give us.
Wow.
And so in that, I think if you can base your ministry around that and living? I mean, is it hard? Absolutely. Do you want to? Absolutely not.
Yeah, right.
Like, you don't want to. But we've done the church thing for a while now, that I just know that, like, how people feel 10 years ago is not going to be how they feel today.
Yeah.
And who they are 10 years ago is not who they are today. And here's the most beautiful thing about that is who I was 10 years ago is not who I am today.
Me too.
Let's just be honest. Like, who I was 10 years ago probably made them leave. Like, who I was 10 years ago is probably like, oh, this is a train wreck.
Yeah, that's right.
But God was gracious with me, and he did a work in me. Yeah. And I think one of the most beautiful things about ministry is that a lot of times we have this like other focused about like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is who we're going to reach. And those first 5 years, I think, are less about that and more about God, what God's going to do in you.
Wow.
Like, God is doing a work in you, and you think it's for them. And God's like, actually, this is for you.
Yeah.
And so
it's like a 5-year-long short-term mission trip.
Exactly.
Like,
where
I think I'm helping, but mostly
God is getting the junk out of my heart.
Yeah,
and so
that's right.
if you've experienced rejection, if you have, maybe you're in the throes of rejection right now, the most beautiful thing about that is not final. It is not fatal. And you cannot let the hurt of this moment talk you out of and cause you to miss the abundance that God has for you.
Yeah.
And so how this happened in my life is I realized that I was seeing new people in light of the old people.
Wow. Like,
so
I'll see you for a few years and then you're going to go.
Yeah. Talk to me in 3 years after you've been here for a while. And what I realized is that I was missing out on a lot of abundance in that relationship.
Wow. Man, I got to be so careful of that. I'm so prone to that, particularly at church, of like, but the problem with being an attender is the attenders aren't always the first to leave. The staff, everybody from staff's going to leave at some point. They work there. Yeah. And so you have this like, well, hope you like being on staff for a minute because you're going to leave and I'm still going to be here.
They all do.
And that's not, and that's not fair. I am missing out on abundance because I'm carrying myself that way.
And we live in an incredibly transient city. And I think, on one hand you get mad and you're like, why is nobody staying?
I'm surprised Charleston is transient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The number one city for people to live into, and people are always not there on the weekends. Yeah. And they live there.
You live at the beach. Where are you?
why aren't we all moving here? What's going on? Yeah. And you could begrudgingly feel things about that. Yeah. Or you could say, hey, God, what could you do in 1.5 years? Yes. Like what could happen in the 1.5 years? And even going back to what you were saying versus like staff versus attenders, like one of the things that is so interesting about ministry is sometimes we get in a bubble. Real talk here. If you are listening to this and you're in ministry and you're leading a ministry organization, we are asking them to show up at our job and help us out. Yeah. Are you going to show up at their job and help them out tomorrow or the next day? Yeah. Like it's different. No. It's different. It's not apples and apples. It's That's apples and oranges. But just step back for a second and be like, hey, you are asking them of their life, and are you willing to give of your life as well? Yeah. And if not, then I wonder if it's not rejection what you felt, but it was something else because there was never a relationship there in the first place, because relationships are mutual. Yeah. Relationships are like, hey, I'm for you and you're for me. And if it's not, then it's ministry. It's you're helping them and this beautiful thing that is the family of God. Yeah. And you're trying to make the best out of this very broken thing that we do called ministry and church. But I think at the end of the day is this is an investment and we are going to hurt each other all the time, but we can't let rejection have the final word. Yeah. I got so tickled in a little bit of a way when I read that about you sitting there with the person leaving the church and how you felt. And yesterday I got a text from a staff member that's leaving the church. And so I was like, well, me and Nick felt the same thing from two different sides of the table. Yes. It's never easy. But never easy. It isn't easy. And also, you write that, I'm going to turn to the page. You write about, on page 24, right at the beginning, where you're like, just stop being surprised. Yes. Yes. A real way to persist in this. Eventually, here's what you said. Eventually, I realized the truth. I could continue to be surprised and offended by the presence of storms in my life, or I could embrace them. Yes. I have said the same thing to some girls I disciple, like, one of the best practices you can do is practice not being surprised by people being human. Like, just Amen.
practice not being surprised anymore. No, don't hold people to low standards. Hold people to high standards. But like,
Exactly.
when it doesn't go perfect,
Yes.
I have saved a lot of pain by not being shocked.
Yes.
That
exactly.
person could do that thing. You're like, no, stop being surprised.
Yes.
That will help.
Jesus says in John 16:33, I think I'm right, he says, in this world you will have troubles. And so for me, I was so offended by the troubles.
Right.
I was like, God, like, like we live in South Carolina. We get hurricane watches and warnings and storms all the time.
Yeah.
And if I was offended by that all the time, you'd be like, hey, Nick Connolly, move. Like, move.
Yeah, go to Oklahoma, switch to tornadoes. Yeah.
Which I had one the last time I was here. And so I'm not about the tornado life either.
Oh, you did when you were here in December?
Yes, I'm picking hurricanes.
We did.
Hurricanes are my jam.
Yeah.
Hurricanes are my jam.
Tornadoes are pretty demonic, if you ask me. I'm serious. I think they are a level of weather. Yeah.
So life.
And it came really close to y'all, actually.
We're in the basement.
Yeah.
I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm here because I'm freaking out. And now I'm freaking out in the basement of a place that is not home. It was wild.
I looked up on site after that tornado went through because it came so close.
They got a picture of it.
Y'all.
It was right in the background.
Anyway, so
storms,
yeah.
Yes, offense. And I think a lot of times we become offended by God and to God because of the storms in our life. And we miss out on the growth because of that. And I was the chief president of the offenders club, offended by God.
Yeah.
Like, God, I'm out here doing your work. I'm on the streets, the Lord's work, doing the thing.
I work for you.
Yeah. I'm loving the people. I'm loving the people I don't want to love.
Yeah.
And
I know.
And I just realized, I was like, I've got to stop being offended by the resistance. And instead, I've got to choose persistence.
Yes.
I've got to.
Yes. That's right. Because this part doesn't end.
Doesn't change.
While we are on earth, we will not stop having troubles.
Yes.
And people will not stop being human.
Yeah.
And so the storms will not stop.
Yeah.
So if we can remove our offended, in my worst days, if you knew how much I said to the Lord, I work for you. How is this? And then the Lord's like, you don't work for me. This isn't what we've done here. Particularly about a decade ago, that was kind of a pretty consistent complaint from me. What did we not say that you want to make sure we cover?
I even continuing with that, like at the end of the book, like I was rereading it recently, and I just was like, I think the other thing that helps us is, yes, resistance is permanent here, but where we are going, there is no resistance.
Oh, it's so
like
good.
Where we're going to the land of dry eyes.
Yeah.
Like we're going to the land that God has prepared for us. Like one day we will be with him and he will be with us.
Yes.
And so I do just feel like if you are listening and you're like, man, the onslaught of resistance is happening in my life. Like it is everywhere I turn. And the beautiful thing about God is that's not a pronouncement over our life now.
Yeah.
And there is going to be a harvest, there's going to be breakthrough, there's going to be a fruit, but it's not a pronouncement over where we're going.
Yeah.
Like
that's
how
good.
this thing ends is without resistance.
Yeah, that's right.
How this thing ends is without tears. How this thing ends is in the presence of God with him forever. And so even the concept of harvest, like, does God do some things here? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is a better place that is coming.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Nick, thanks for making time to do this today.
This is incredible.
Thanks for being on the show. I'm really
Thanks
grateful.
for having me.
I can't wait for people to read Don't Give Up Just Yet. It is available now when you're listening to this. And I think that this is the same thing that stirs up when we hear this conversation stirs up when you read this book. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
Very grateful. You guys, isn't he the best? Man, what an honest and helpful and thoughtful conversation. Go get your copy of Don't Give Up Just Yet and go follow Nick on social media. Tell him thanks again for being on the show. If you got any questions from this episode and you're listening on Spotify, you can just drop them in the Q&A feature there on Spotify. But if you're listening anywhere else, just go to Instagram and DM us at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'd love to answer all your questions over there. If you need anything else from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, This Week in New York. And anywhere you need me, that is how you can find me. And I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me, I'd like to go to Central Park. That's what sounds fun to me, go on a little walk. It is very cold in New York City, but let's go for it. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday with our Lent 2024 episode where we're talking all about the season of Lent, all about fasting, and what does it look like to do a digital fast. That's our conversation coming on Monday with Pastor Darren Whitehead. We'll see y'all then.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun.